Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. Think I did all of that correct this time. No need to do a second intro. I think I got the right screen. It was framed properly and everything. So, you know, I'm getting there. I'm getting there with professionability. Welcome everyone who has come out so far on this Friday evening. I really appreciate it. And I hope you're excited for some Canadian shenanigans and other stuff. Although I think I'm covering other stuff more than I'm covering Canadian shenanigans today. And I really want to hit on some stories, so I'm going to try my best to not ramble too much and get off track too much so that I can actually get through the stories. But hey, see? Got my Majority Report hoodie on. This is a large, and it is large. I almost got a medium, but I was worried I'd rather have something that's slightly too large than slightly too small. So, and besides, you want a hoodie to be big and cozy so you can snuggle into it. But, yeah, Majority Report. I got Majority Report merch. I'm so happy. So, a quick update on my kitty cats. For those of you who care. Abernathy seems to be improving. He got a shot of antibiotics that works for like 10 to 14 days. His eye is getting super watery, but it's not as red. So I think it's starting to help. And both him and Lanier are not sneezing nearly as much as they were before. So all of that is good. Still taking Lanier into the vet on Wednesday to make sure that it's all out of his lungs and that there's no infection in there. And when I took Abernathy in, they gave me some recovery cat food and some powder stuff to put on it. And Frodo is eating it. Like, he's eating it. Like, a significant, notable amount. He is eating this cat food, which is great. But this cat food isn't designed for him to stay on it. And I can't afford for him to stay on it because it's just over $5 a can. And it's like it's not the big can, it's the little flat tuna can size thing. So I'm taking him into the vet as well on Wednesday just to see. This is the not-for-profit vet, which is super great. Their rates are so much cheaper than the vet that I had to take Frodo to because it was just an emergency and they had, you know, access to x-ray and ultrasound and all that other sort of stuff that you would need. So I'm taking him into the not-for-profit one as well on Wednesday to see if there's any other kind of food that I can get him that he might continue to eat. But it is very encouraging just the amount that I'm seeing him eat, especially if this cat food. So I'll see if they know of like a different brand that I can buy in stores that is similar enough to that he would like, and one that's maybe half the price. That would be nice. So it is good. That is good. Oh, and a little update on my last live stream. It got demonetized. Oh, it was ineligible. Apparently copyright things. So it's not a copyright strike. I'm allowed to have it up. However, I'm not allowed to monetize it. Basically, the people who claimed it can review it and get money from it if my video was making money on it, which I'm not concerned about at this point because my videos aren't exactly making money. And the funny part is, what part of it was copywritten? So I was showing a video of Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, saying, this time of year it's really rough, and the lineups for the food bank at her church are really long and all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't that entire segment. It was just like this tiny little part, like not even a minute's worth part of that, because I was breaking it up and talking in it, fair use and all of that. But it was just this tiny little segment within it, like not even a minute long, where she's saying how much her heart breaks to see these poor pores in the lineup. And because of that, Bell Media wants to steal my profits from it, because apparently Bell Media needs to do that, which is just so ridiculous that they can do that sort of thing when, like, that's one of the things that I struggle with doing live streams and videos in general, is figuring out what exactly I can use video wise, because there's no doubt about it, that clip I did should be fair use. I was commenting on it, I was breaking it up, I wasn't showing it just for the sake of showing it. So it should be fair use, but Canadian presses, news medias can get really particular about you using their stuff. So it's always like a toss-up of, can I use that? Can I not use that? And there should be an easier way to go about fighting that. Like, I don't care for this particular video, because like I said, it's not like I'm making money from these videos yet. And, if I had to, let's say, fight this, like if it was an actual strike or something, then I could, I could justly say that it's fair use, but I don't really have the energy or anything to do that. And like I said, it's not a big deal for this instance. And it's not the first time this happened. The other time was with a singing cat. Yeah. But it's just interesting that it's like people can copyright stuff so that if you're using it for fair use on your channel, they can then claim the profits from it. Yeah, it's so again, it's not an actual copyright strike. The video is allowed to be up, and if I want it to be monetized, I just have to clip out that tiny little part. So, yeah, we'll see. I'll try to be a bit more careful about it. Again, it's just, I see other channels, like the Majority Report or the Surfs or, David Dole, Mike. Even back when I was watching TYT, I would see them use all of these different types of videos from media, and it's almost like as soon as I try to use those, it doesn't work for some reason. That was one of the super frustrating things at Rebel HQ, was the main show could use certain clips that I was not allowed to use. And I didn't quite understand why that was a thing. So I would see these clips on the main show thinking, oh yeah, I could use that, I want to make something about that, and then just totally not be able to use it, and super frustrating. So I will be a little bit more careful going forward, because, I don't want actual copyright strikes. So Looney Tunes 9000, I've done that 2 times with General Strike and a bunch of copyright strikes that I got away with. Yeah. It's it's frustrating. Frustrating. Anyway, I don't want to ramble too much. I want to, get to it. And you know what? See, I'm not advertising the Majority Report. I just think I make the Majority Report look good. If they ever want a Canadian content creator, I'd be more than happy to join the team. Like I've said before, plenty of times, my ultimate dream would be to have a Canadian version of the Majority Report, which is not something I can accomplish on my own, and I'm pretty bad at networking and working with others. So there's that. Maybe someday, hopefully I can get there. Anyway, so the stories that I kind of have lined up today because I was saying, I need to throw in the Friday stream after I did the Wednesday stream because there's so much news that I wanted to get to. And it's almost like 2 streams a week isn't enough. And then even between Wednesday and Friday, I added a whole bunch more stories that I want to get to. So we'll see how long I can maintain 3 streams a week before I'm like, nope, there needs to be more. Because it's kind of amazing how much news and stuff is actually out there. And again, I try to bring in a lot of Canadian news that the other channels aren't necessarily paying attention to because it's, tiny little Canada. Well, big Canada, tiny population Canada. And who really, really cares about what happens up here other than, the population of Canada, which even then, not too many of them actually care because they're too distracted by the States. And I'll actually get to that in a little bit because there's some interesting stuff. Anyway, I am rambling. So I have up just some things about the right to choose what happens to your body. Got that. Then something I wanted to go over about Canada with we do not have free speech here. We have freedom of expression. And I haven't read the article yet, so we'll find out together what the details are. But it says that people can now get sued for calling somebody like me a groomer. So if I ever needed to supplement my income, I think I know a way. So it'll be interesting and just, educate people a little bit on our freedom of expression and hate speech laws. Yay, interesting stuff. And then I have cops acting poorly. I have my take on the whole Trump situation. See, it's not just Canada I talk about. Like, it is important for us to also talk about some politics in the States because what happens politically down there has a huge impact on what happens up here. We have so many Trump supporters up here, it's ridiculous. And the influence that the American political landscape has on us, again, ridiculous. So it is important that we do pay attention, and it's more important to kind of figure out how they connect, though, at times. But I have my take that I haven't heard other people actually say about Trump. So, maybe I'm just being contrarian with it. We'll find out. I kind of believe it, I kind of don't. Well, it's so hard to predict anything these days. Anyway, so I got that. And, oh yeah, I have a whole bunch of stuff on Gaza too. Ugh. Do, 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 do. Okay, I don't know if I really want to bombard people with, because it's if you're like me and you watch a lot of the other political shows, you're seeing a lot of it. I'll just point out some things. So let's go here to Rolling Stones. I hate it when the screens don't quite fit. Let's see if I can I make this small? There we go. Just had to make the screen a bit smaller there. So Israeli evidence of Hamas command center in Al-Shifa hospital falls short. Report. An investigation by the Washington Post found that Israeli evidence attempting to justify its attack on Al-Shifa hospital holds little water. Is this really surprising to anyone who's paying attention? Last month, the world watched as a spectacle rarely seen in modern warfare unfolded in Gaza. The Israeli military tore through Al-Shifa Hospital, the Gaza Strip's main hospital, forcing the evacuation of patients and refugees as part of a siege on the medical complex that resulted in dozens of patient deaths and untold number of additional casualties. Israel's month-long assault on Gaza has already resulted in more than 20,000 Palestinian deaths since October 7th, many of them civilians and children. Even in a conflict as brutal as the one currently unfolding in Gaza, an organized military operation against a hospital is virtually unheard of. Israel, for weeks, has made public its preemptive justification for an incursion into a medical establishment that is typically protected under humanitarian law, asserting that Al-Shifa contained a Hamas command center within the networks of tunnels and secret rooms that used, patients and doctors as human shields against Israel military action. Yeah, all hospitals are equipped for that sort of thing. The Biden administration continues to back Israel's position on the matter, and earlier this week reasserted their own claims of possessing evidence that Hamas was operating underneath Al-Shifa Hospital before Israel attacked. On Monday, the State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller told reporters in a press briefing that the U.S. remains confident that Hamas was using Al-Shifa as command and control post as it used other civilian sites to hide terrorist infrastructure, to hide weapons, to hide fighters, and ultimately to use civilians as shields. So this is part of how much faith can we put in the American government when it comes to this sort of thing? If they're still no, we reaffirmed that, yeah, it was a terrorist base in this hospital, and so Israel was totally justified in bombing a hospital and leaving people there to die and killing people around there and all that sort of stuff. Totally justified because of the terrorist base there. When anyone who can think critically looked at that situation and called, bullshit on it. Most people already know we shouldn't be trusting the American government when it comes to a lot of this stuff. But what does that say about a nation that when it comes to war, when it comes to things that, really matter, we have to doubt? Because we all know that they're lying. They're being misleading. They're not telling us the whole truth. And so that's why when something, let's go back here. So when they're lying about this type of thing, that there's a command center under a hospital, and that's why Israel, it was okay for them to attack this hospital because Hamas was based there. And we all know that's not true. Just thinking critically, common sense, that's not true. And even if it was true, what they did to that hospital and the people there, the innocent people there, was a war crime. But here's the US holding fast on that. So we know it's not true. We know the government is lying. So then when it comes to something like COVID, can you really blame people for not believing the government? When the government was trying to say it's contagious, you need to wear masks, this is a problem, you need to get a vaccine, can you really blame a certain segment of the population for not believing the government when in other instances they have proven to be lying, to be misleading? The amount of damage this does to the credibility of the government, and then the amount of damage that can lead to what happens when if there's another pandemic, another wave where the government has to crack down? What happens if there's breaking news about the war that is super important, we need to know, but now we all doubt it because we know they're not being truthful all the time? It's ridiculous that we have to be in this situation, but for those who are plugged in and know, we know the same sort of thing happened back during the Iraq invasion, that the whole weapons of mass destruction thing was going on. And here they are doing it again. People haven't been able to look back on that hindsight 2020 and be like, yeah, so they were lying. They were misleading us. That led to the death of 1 million innocent people. And they're doing it again. And it's leading to the death of innocent people, only now they're doing it like in real time that we're here and we're aware and witnessing this. It really is astonishing that the American government can get away with this. Let's see. Following the siege on Al-Shifa, the Israeli government attempted to convince the world that the hospital held both the literal and figurative smoking guns, which would prove its alleged connection to Hamas military operations. To justify such a brutal attack, one would expect there to have been clear, irrefutable evidence that of Hamas's presence and use of complex, but aside from a handful of weapons and some paraphernalia, the findings have been lackluster. An analysis by the Washington Post of open source materials and evidence provided by Israel in the aftermath of the attack found very little proof that the tunnels under Al-Shifa led to a major Hamas command center. Yet so many people died horrible deaths there. I don't know if that was the one with the premature babies left in the incubators. I don't know if this was the same hospital, but the fact is that I don't know if it's the same hospital because this type of thing has played out in so many of the hospitals there that I can't even call to mind the name of the hospital where that horrid thing occurred. It speaks volumes about the situation. The fact that there are no more hospitals in Gaza that are operating, I think there's only a few that are still somewhat marginally working, but they're all running out of supplies and they're just being overwhelmed. But there's that, and then I wanted to... It's important to note this again. Let's make this bigger. 172-member nation voted in favor of UN resolution affirming Palestinians' right to self-determination. 4 countries voted against it. Yeah. United States, still on that list. Like even Canada, even my country has started to be like, yeah, this is a bit much. Like it's pretty bad when my own government, who's usually lockstep with the United States, is like, okay, maybe we need to back off a bit and acknowledge what's happening. Also, again, I don't know for copyright reasons if I can actually play this, but I do encourage people, if you are on the hostile fart sauna, or you can go to Al Jazeera English. I'm pretty sure they would have it on the webpage. There's Sarah Jama, yay! MPP for Hamilton Center. She was the one that was censured by Doug Ford. She can no longer represent her constituents in the House, but she can't speak on their behalf. First Somali Canadian to be a member of Parliament, provincial level, Muslim, just an amazing, amazing person. I have a bunch of videos about her, and here she is talking with Al Jazeera English about everything that happened there. There is music playing in the background too, so again, I don't know if I can play this, and I already got a copyright strike this week. Well, again, not a full strike, like a half strike, because I'm allowed to keep it up. I'm just not allowed to monetize it. So, I can try to remember to link this in the description box below. Let's see, there was something else that I wanted to mention here, but there's some other stuff. I don't know if I want to get to it right now. Lanier is coming in here. He might want to jump up on my lap. He's playing with one of those little spring things. He absolutely loves them. Oh, thank you, the Silver Samaritan, for the $10. Really appreciate it. Aragon voice for Frodo. Thank you. I appreciate it. You weren't here for the update. I don't know if you were or not, but I got a cat food from the last vet that I went to, and Frodo's actually eating it, like a significant amount, which is really reassuring for the moment. And I'm going to have him seen at this not-for-profit vet on Wednesday to see if there's anything more that they can do. He can't stay on this particular cat food, so I do have to figure out what's next, but I'm hoping he can be on it just long enough to put on some weight, if nothing else, and remind him, you know, food is good and he should eat it. Let's see. Adrian Vixen. Also, my pronouns are they, them. Oh, good to know. I will try to remember that. Eris Azul, after living in 3 different countries, I think all governments are full of shit. The problem is the US has too much power and stolen money, in my opinion. Yeah. I don't like how the United States was able to veto certain things on the Security Council, even though like everyone else voted for it because they're a special member. They have that special power. No one country should be able to have that level of power. Environmental coffee house. Public health is a bit different and really should be non-political, but was politicized because of Donald Trump. Yeah. Kelly Bach, the people are literally starving to death. Yeah, the situation in Gaza is just so horrific. It is just beyond belief that we can live safely here in these wealthy countries. And sorry, Lanier is doing really bad timing for making noise in the background. That we can live in these countries and demand our government do something, and our governments are completely capable of doing something to help and choose not to with this level of humanitarian crisis. It is just mind-boggling that our governments are allowing this to happen when we have the power to make it stop. Okay. Lanier, did you want to actually just come up here? He does. Okay, so maybe he doesn't. Like right before this, he was like annoyingly all over me on my shoulders, wanting to chew on the strings and just being in my face. Oh, the little spring thing is caught on the cord. Just a sec. I don't need him chewing on a cord to get the spring off. Okay, so why don't we get back to some of the things that I had in store for us? Make sure I have the right screen up. This screen. Yes, this screen. Going to talk a little bit about reproductive rights because we know that's a shit show all on its own, especially in the United States. It's better in Canada, not great. So, oh look, from the serfs on Twitter, oh look, the nightmare scenario that everyone warned about but Republicans said would never happen, happened. Texas Supreme Court ruling to force a woman to risk her life and health to carry a non-viable pregnancy to term is proof that in practice there are no such things as exceptions for the life of the mother. And so I was just watching this video. Let's go to... I have a different setup if it's YouTube or not, because in this way you see you can I'm using my mouse, like you can actually see my mouse, which you can't when it's over on that screen. But this way you can actually see the title and the channel and stuff clearly while still having full screen video. So I did that for okay, it annoys me when other channels don't do that. And it helps to lead people to this person. Rebecca Watson, absolutely fantastic YouTube channel. Go check her out. She does a lot of debunking like scientific things. She's more like critical thinker on issues and poking holes in things like, you know, the healing touch or other things that are around. And she covers this story pretty good in this video. Think I'll just play the first part of it so that you guys get the gist, and then please go over and give her a watch because she is fabulous.
Let's talk about Kate Cox. I'll go over the facts in case you're not aware of them. Cox is a 31-year-old woman in Texas who fell pregnant this year with a fetus that she very much wanted to bring to term. Unfortunately, when she was about 20 weeks pregnant, her doctors informed her that her fetus had a genetic abnormality called trisomy 18 or Edwards syndrome. The condition has no cure, and it ranges in severity, but most fetuses with it die before birth. Most babies born with it die painfully within 2 weeks. Less than 10% make it to their first birthday, and a handful survive to their teens with nonstop extensive care. In extremely rare cases, a person with trisomy 18 may have a functional heart that allows them to live to 40 with severe disabilities. Cox wasn't so lucky, and her doctors told her that her fetus had absolutely zero chance of living long after birth, if it even got that far. Furthermore, they informed her that continuing to carry the pregnancy would jeopardize her own health and her future fertility, as she would likely require a C-section, which would put her at risk of uterine rupture and hysterectomy. Cox obviously was aware that after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade, Texas moved immediately to effectively ban abortion. However, she also knew that they had carved out an exception for the life of the mother, so she assumed that she could end her pregnancy without putting her own life and her own health at risk, and without bringing a baby into the world, only to watch it suffer horribly for a few hours or days before dying. She was wrong. Exceptions for the life of the mother have always just been lip service, referring only to this fantastical scenario in which doctors can say, without a shadow of a doubt, that a woman will die if she brings a pregnancy to term, as if the baby's going to emerge from the womb holding a cartoon bomb with the fuse already lit. Her doctors told her she just could not get an abortion in her home state of Texas, so Cox contacted the Center for Reproductive Rights, which quickly moved to file a case against the state of Texas for emergency authorization for an abortion, allowing her.
Yeah, so she goes on to explain how basically this woman had to flee her state in order to get the treatment she needed for her health. And also, like, here is the ideal scenario, like the most picture perfect scenario for that exemption when it comes to this, that, you know, she's a white woman, she's already had kids, they want to have lots more kids, they want to, like, all this sort of stuff. And even then, it wasn't enough. And, you know, having to carry the fetus much longer might have could risk her not being able to have any more children, which is something she wanted to do. So I really recommend that you go check out Rebecca's channel. Just absolutely amazing content on her channel. And then let's go to the next part of this. Okay, so I came across some things that I thought would be kind of helpful to put in perspective some of, you know, what all of this is, like the double standards or ways to counter what anti-choicers are saying. Like good nuggets of information to kind of have in the back of your brain so that when somebody says, well, this happens, you can hit back and say, no, actually, this is what actually happens. And again, just some interesting different perspectives. And I came across this thread here on the hostile fart sauna. Sorry, I need to Lanier is being a pain. Get down from there. Down. He's still such a baby, playing with things he shouldn't be playing with. Yeah, so I came across this thread here. Really interesting thread. And, it's been along the lines of something I've thought about, and if I had a bigger platform and could, speak about it, I would. And it's the, well, if you want to stop abortions, you need to prevent unwanted pregnancies. And so it should be illegal, and I'll just be hetero cis normative with this for ease of conversation. So it should be illegal for any man to have sex with a woman without a condom unless she actually wants to get pregnant from him that very time. And then all unwanted pregnancies would go away. But we can't do that to men. That's not allowed, but that would prevent the vast majority, because of course sometimes condoms will fail. We all know that. And there would still be abortions needed for, health reasons. So it wouldn't eliminate them completely, but it would get rid of like 90% of unwanted pregnancies. Easy solution there. And this person here, Gabrielle, is it Gabrielle? Yeah, Gabrielle Blair. I'm so bad with names. See, part of the problem with names is it will also depend on where their background is from, on how some pronunciations happen. And some names, like a name that trips me up every time is Sean, Sean. I will never for the life of me, when I read that, hear it in my head as Sean. I always say Scene, because Sean is Shawn. But Sean, how does that sound, Sean? Anyway, silly little rant here. And what can I say? Most people can't pronounce my last name. Anyway, I thought this would be a good thread to kind of go over to give that counter perspective. So, convinced men actually have zero interest in stopping abortions. Here's why. I should probably read the first part of this. Scroll up. I'm a mother of 6 and a Mormon. I have a good understanding of arguments surrounding abortion, religion, and otherwise. I've been listening to men grandstand about women's reproductive rights, and I'm convinced men actually have zero interest in stopping abortions. Here's why. If you want to stop abortion, you need to prevent unwanted pregnancies, and men are 100% responsible for unwanted pregnancies. No, for real, they are. Perhaps you're thinking it takes 2, and yes, it does take 2 for intentional pregnancies, but all unwanted pregnancies are caused by the irresponsible ejaculations of men, period. Don't believe me? Let's walk through it. Let's start with this. Women can only get pregnant about 2 days each month, and that's for a limited number of years. That makes 24 days a year a woman might get pregnant, but men can cause pregnancy 365 days a year. In fact, if you're a man who ejaculates multiple times a day, you could cause multiple pregnancies daily. In theory, a man could cause thousands of unwanted pregnancies in just 1 year. That is such a horrifying thought that could happen. And although their sperm gets crappier as they age, men can cause unwanted pregnancies from puberty till death. So just starting with basic biology plus the calendar, it's easy to see men are the issue here. But what about birth control? If a woman doesn't want to risk unwanted pregnancy, why wouldn't she just use birth control? If a woman can manage to figure out how to get an abortion, surely she can get birth control, right? Great question. Modern birth control is possibly the greatest invention of the last century, and I'm very grateful for it. It's also brutal. The side effects for many women are ridiculously harmful, so ridiculous that when an oral contraceptive for men was created, it wasn't approved because of the side effects, and the list of side effects was about a third as long as the known side effects for women's oral contraception. Also, you got to think of cost, and somebody like me with ADHD, I would never remember to take a pill the same time every day. Like that will never happen. So back when I went on birth control, I did the Depo-Provera route, where it's just an injection once every 3 months. Then I was on it way too long. Way too long, apparently. And fortunately, after that, I was granted getting my tubes tied, which is something I wanted. At 25, I was able to do that because, Canada, eugenics, it's a thing. They don't want people like me having babies and are more than happy to help me with that decision. But a lot of other women I talk to who are like 30 and already have children, their doctors are still like, oh, but you might change your mind. Anyway, that's a whole other rant, and I have videos about it. So Gabrielle, there's a lot to unpack in just that story, but simply point out, in case you didn't know, that as a society, we really don't mind if a woman suffers physically or mentally as long as it makes things easier for men. But good news, men. Even with the horrible side effects, women are still very willing to use birth control. Unfortunately, it's harder to get than it should be. Birth control options for women require a doctor's appointment and prescription. It's not free and often not cheap. Yeah, just to go back to the side effects, like I remember the talk about the male birth control and just, well, we can't deal with this side effect or this side effect and this and this and this. And meanwhile, everyone else is like, well, we've been doing it for years and stuff. And, you have to look at the cost benefit thing, you know. But yeah, they can't handle what the typical woman would have to handle with birth control. And yet, for everything that men can think of, they want to say how much more superior they are than women. Well, a lot of these men, like, oh, they can't compete in sports as well as we can, and it's like all this other stuff, like, oh no, even Jeopardy and all this sort of stuff, women are not equal to men and all of this and that and everything. But apparently we are superior. Well, I say we as in somebody who has a uterus. We are superior in handling birth control. If we talked about the pill, it requires consistently daily use and doesn't leave much room for mistakes, forgetfulness, or unexpected disruptions to daily schedules. And again, the side effects can be brutal. I'm still grateful for it. Please don't take it away. Which in some states, they are actually trying to do that. They're trying to make it so that it can't be insured at all, or that it's very difficult for people to get it. I'm just saying women's birth control isn't simple or easy. It contrasts. Let's look at birth control for men, meaning condoms. Condoms are readily available at all hours, inexpensive, convenient, and don't require prescription. They're effective and work on demand instantly. Men can keep them stocked up just in case, so they're always prepared. Amazing. They are so much easier than birth control options for women. As a bonus, in general, women love when men use condoms. They keep us from getting STDs, and they don't lessen our pleasure during sex or prevent us from climaxing. And the best part, cleanup is so much easier. No waddling to the toilet. Okay, I don't really want to read that part there. You get the drift. So why in the world are there ever unwanted pregnancies? Why don't men just use condoms every time they have sex? Seems simple, right? Oh, I remember. Men don't love condoms. In fact, men frequently pressure women to have sex without a condom, and it's not unheard of for men to remove the condom during sex without the woman's permission or knowledge. That's assault, and the cutesy little term that they use for that is stealthing. When the person is unaware that the condom is being removed during intercourse, which is, yeah, it's not consensual. Like if you consented to have sex with a condom use and then you take it off halfway through, then you are violating that person's consent and it is assault. Not to mention, you then run the risks of pregnancy because maybe you have to use the condom because you can't use the birth control because some people can't. And then there's the risk of the sexually transmitted illnesses and all that sort of stuff. Like there's lots of reasons why somebody might want to use condoms. And so to remove it without the other person's consent is an absolute violation. Why would men want to have sex without a condom? Good question. And that's the thing that gets to me too, that men aren't worried about it. Like I understand why they're not worried about the pregnancy because it's not like they have to carry the child. But shouldn't they be worried about sexually transmitted illnesses? Like shouldn't that be something that kind of crosses their mind as well? That it's just safer to do it this way? Apparently it's because for the minutes they are penetrating their partner, having no condom gives the experience more pleasure. So there, men are willing to risk getting a woman pregnant, which means literally risking her life, her health, her social status, her relationships, and her career so that they can have experience a few minutes of slightly more pleasure. Is that for real? Yes, it is. What are we talking about here pleasure-wise? If there's a pleasure scale with pain being 0 and going down negatives, a back scratching falling at 5 and an orgasm without a condom being a 10, where would sex with a condom fall? Like a 7 or 8. So how much does it really diminish the pleasure? Like is it then unpleasurable for a man to have sex with a condom? Like is it that bad that they get no pleasure from it, or is it still actually pleasurable? It's still pleasurable. Yeah, so it's not like sex with a condom is not pleasurable. It's just not as pleasurable. An 8 instead of a 10. Let me emphasize that again. Men regularly choose to put women at massive risk by having non-condom sex in order to experience a few minutes of slightly more pleasure. And let's just, I do want to point it out that we are talking about people who can conceive and people who can inseminate. And that's not gender dependent because I am non-binary and I can conceive. The serfs, Lance, he was once joking about it, saying, the words against like inseminators and stuff like that. And I was thinking about it because I'm not necessarily keen on birthing people myself, but the idea of using the terms like people who can conceive and people who can inseminate, and you have your conceivers and inseminators, I'm actually like, that's not so bad, actually. That could catch on. It's simple, and there's a term for both parties because often, again, it's focused on the person with the uterus, like a birthing person, people who can become pregnant and stuff, but you never really hear about the people who provide the seed, the semen. You never hear what they're called. They're usually left out of the conversation. So I was just thinking, conceivers, inseminators, it might sound a little strange at first, but I think that has the potential to actually catch on. I wouldn't mind that so much. Now keep in mind that for the truly condom-averse men also have non-condom always ready birth control built right in called pull out. It's not perfect and it's a favorite joke, but it's also 96% effective. So surely we can expect men who aren't wearing condom to at least pull out every time they have sex, right? Nope. And why not? Well, again, apparently it's slightly more pleasurable to climax inside a vagina than, say, on the partner's stomach, so men are willing to risk the life, health, and well-being of a woman in order to experience a tiny bit more pleasure for like 5 seconds during orgasm. It's mind-boggling and disturbing when you realize that the choice men are making, and honestly, I'm not as mad as I should be about this, because we've trained men from birth that their pleasure is utmost importance in the world, and to disassociate sex and pregnancy. While we're here, let's talk a bit more about pleasure and biology. Did you know that a man can't get a woman pregnant without having an orgasm, which means that we can conclude getting a woman pregnant is a pleasurable act for men. But did you further know that a man can get a woman pregnant without her feeling any pleasure at all? In fact, it's totally possible for a man to impregnate women while causing, really bad stuff. In contrast, a woman can have non-stop orgasms with or without a partner and never once get herself pregnant. A woman's orgasm has literally nothing to do with pregnancy or fertility. Her button. I don't want to get this channel or this episode demonetized, so I don't know. Are we allowed to use medical language? I would think so. Her clitoris exists not for creating new babies, but simply for pleasure. No matter how many orgasms she has, they won't make her pregnant. Pregnancies only happen when men have an orgasm. Unwanted pregnancies can only happen when men orgasm irresponsibly. What this means is a woman can be the sluttiest slut in the world who loves having orgasms all day long and all night long, and she will never find herself with an unwanted pregnancy unless a man shows up and ejaculates irresponsibly. Women enjoying sex does not equal unwanted pregnancies and abortion. Men enjoying sex have irresponsible ejaculations. It's what causes unwanted pregnancies and abortion. How much longer was this? Yeah, so interesting thread, goes on a lot longer. I don't think I need to go over the rest of this. I'm pretty sure everyone here kind of gets the gist of what this is. So she also gets into the experience of like actually being pregnant and all this sort of stuff. It is yeah, and she talks about like the idea of like another way we could do this is just, have a man's tube snipped as soon as he hits puberty and then undo it, because in a lot of instances it can be reversed when that person is ready to have babies. And you can always, as a backup, have like a sperm bank of that person's sperm just in case, and that way to again get rid of all unwanted pregnancies. But that's, as soon as it's things relating to men's bodies and policing men's bodies, suddenly it's not something that men want to get involved with. Like, could you imagine a room full of women and people assigned a female at birth all sitting around a table just kind of saying, well, men should be allowed to do this or that with their bodies. We should be allowed to do this to them or demand this of them or charge them with a crime if they have an orgasm when they shouldn't have one. Yeah, that they would never tolerate that, and yet that's been the case the other way around for as far back as this stupid misogynistic patriarchal society has been in place. So yeah, I encourage people to go and finish reading that thread. Really good insight and just the opposite perspective on this. To see if there's a comment that I should get to. Okay, so next one is more about, let's see. I get really annoyed when they stay at the top of the screen, so you didn't see me do that. This article I found a long time ago from October 30th, 2012, and I bookmarked it because I found it to be a very good article, and I really should remember to actually link this in the description box below, because again, it's a bit long, so I don't want to go over all of it, but this is a good article to read for the counter arguments to the anti-choicers and what they're saying about like when a person is pregnant and all that sort of stuff. And this comes from somebody who used to be pro-life, you know, how I lost faith in the pro-life movement. And she came to realize that anyone who is actually pro-life would support abortions because they save lives and other things. So the spring of my sophomore year of college, I was president. Oh, Vicky, I guess it's Vicky Garrison is the author of this. The spring of my sophomore year in college, I was president of my university Student for Life chapter. The fall of my junior year of college, I cut ties with the pro-life movement. 5 years later, I have lost that last shred of faith I had in the movement. This is my story. I'm trying to not, I just don't want it to be me on screen reading an article. And this is a really long article, but well worth the read. So I'm going to see if I can scan to pick out like a few key points that might be good. But she starts off talking about like how she used to be one of those kids that the parents would drag around to hand out the pamphlets about banning abortion and all that sort of stuff. And she was really indoctrinated into believing that. So she says, I believe that pro-life movement was a genuine in its goals, but simply ignorant about how its goals might be best obtained. I have come to the conclusion I was wrong. So banning abortions does not decrease abortion rates. I think a lot of us know that one, where it doesn't get rid of abortions, it just gets rid of safe abortions when you ban them, because they will still happen, but they happen in ways that put the person's life at risk even more. And again, this is such a good article that I kind of want to go over all of it, but I don't want to just be like a talking head here for this entire time. Let's just pick out. Moreover, researchers found that abortion was safe in countries where it was legal, but dangerous in countries where it was outlawed and performed clandestinely. Global abortion accounts for 13% of women's deaths during pregnancy and childbirth. And there are 31 abortions for every 100 lives birthed, the study said. But the legal status of abortion did greatly affect the dangers involved, and the researchers said. Generally, where abortion is legal, it will be provided in a safe manner. And the opposite is also true. Where it is illegal, it's likely to be unsafe, performed under unsafe conditions by poorly trained providers. Highly restrictive abortion laws are not associated with lower abortion rates. For example, abortion rate is 29% or 29 per 1,000 women childbearing age in Africa and 32 per 1,000 in Latin America, regions which abortion is illegal under most circumstances. In the majority of the countries, the rate is 12 per 1,000 in Western Europe, where abortion is generally permitted on broad grounds. So talks about birth control, but if banning abortions does not decrease abortion rates, what does? Why some countries have low abortion rates and others have much higher. She also gets into why some people want to ban birth control because, you know, the zygotes or something, and they still see that as life. What about the zygotes? In the 5 years since the study of the October, I rethought my many things. I no longer believe that abortion is murder because I no longer hold that a zygote, embryo, or fetus is a person. I also came to realize that the focus on personhood ignores the fact that a zygote, embryo, or fetus is growing inside another person's body. For me, the key dividing line is birth. But even as my position shifted, I was still willing to give pro-life movement the benefit of doubt. Why? Because I believe that the pro-life movement's opposition to birth control seemed not from a desire to control women's sex lives, but rather from the belief the pill was an abortion deficient or something like that. That meant that the pro-life movement could oppose abortion as murder, yet also oppose birth control without actually being inconsistent. But the last few months, I read several things that shaken this belief. So she also goes on to talk about how the body will naturally expel certain zygotes. Let's see if I can find it in here. Ah, yeah, I wish that there was an easy way to just kind of highlight all of the things that I kind of wanted to get to through this. So I will remember to link this in the description box below because it's a long read, but it's definitely worth it. And she also kind of gets into the fact, like, if all these people put all of this energy into, like, all the energy they have to deny people the choice to choose what happens to their body into research and medical assistance to find out, like, why the body is naturally expelling zygotes, or to help people survive birth, and put all this effort and focus into making sure that the people who want to get pregnant can have healthy pregnancies and stuff like that, so much suffering would be solved. But so, conclusion, after reading that last article just a couple days ago, I realized something. I am done making excuses for the pro-life movement. I am done trying to explain that the movement is not anti-woman. I am done trying to insist that the movement really is simply trying to save unborn babies. I'm done because it's not true. The pro-life movement supports the exact policies that will keep abortion rates high. It is those who believe in choice who support policies that will bring abortion rates down. I was duped and I'm ready to admit it now. The reality is the so-called pro-life movement is not about saving babies, it's about punishing women for having sex. That's why they oppose birth control. That's why they want to ban abortion, even though doing so will simply drive women to have dangerous back alley abortions. That's why they want to penalize women who take public assistance and then dare to have sex, leaving exemptions for those who become pregnant from rape. It's not about babies. If it was about babies, they would be making access to birth control widespread and free and creating comprehensive social safety nets so that no woman finds herself with a pregnancy she can't afford. They would be raising money for research on why half of all zygotes fail to implant and working to prevent miscarriages. It's not about babies, it's about controlling women. It's about making sure they have consequences for having unapproved sex. But I am very sure that there are other dupes out there. If you're sitting there reading this thinking, but I am really am in it to save unborn babies, I'm sure you're not alone. After all, I was one of you. If you're one of the who have been part of the pro-life movement because you really do believe in saving unborn babies, it's time to cut your ties with the movement. You may be honest and kind-hearted person, but you've been had. You've been taken in. It's time to let go. It's time to support. Yeah, this is how old the article is. Obama cares birth control mandate. It's time to call off opposition to birth control, and it's time to get behind progressive programs that help provide for poor women and their children. It's time to make your actions consistent with your motives. Good article from a long time ago. So good that I had bookmarked it. And I will remember to put this in the description box so that everyone can go and read it, because it's really, yeah, it's a long article. And I don't want to just be a talking head this entire time. Just going to read some chats. We're talking about me and TYT again. I have a video about that. I don't know where that started though, so I don't know what it's in response to. Yes, it's been just over a year that I haven't been with Rebel HQ. Soul Life, I do not have uBlock on my computer. Nope. As a content creator who relies on ads from YouTube, I do not have any sort of block on my computer. Nope. Okay. For those of you who get as annoyed with ads as I do, and you know every now and then they really start cracking down and you get those messages on YouTube about like, you have a blocker and we can detect it. Here's the way around it if you hate it as much as I do. So sometimes it can take the blocker a few days or a week to catch up to the new versions of whatever YouTube is using. Now, that's only if you're logged into your YouTube account. So if you log out of your YouTube account, your blocker will work. However, then you can't, your feed doesn't show up the way it does. Your favorites doesn't show up. Your history and all that won't show up. The things that you've already watched, all of that won't show up and be convenient. So then what you do is, if you use Google Chrome primarily, open up Firefox, open up YouTube on Firefox, unlog from YouTube on Firefox, find the video you want to watch on Google Chrome, copy and paste it over. The only downside is you can't participate in it. Like, you can't go to the chat, you can't like it, but you don't get any ads until your blocker catches up to it. Just saying. It's a way around it that if you despise ads as much as I do, you actually do that. It's a few steps, but it's worth it. I still want to get into my rant one day. I think I just want to make it into an actual like video essay, the reason why I despise the way ads are online in general. Chrissy said, I wonder what the number of women is that died before abortions were legal. I wonder how many will die now that it's illegal again. Yeah, a lot more people died as a result of not being able to attain abortions that they needed. It is just, it's tragic. Nobody should have that right over somebody else's body. It is your body. And even in Canada, we try to pretend that we're so much better than the States with access and stuff like that. I've done videos on it. You can go check them out, but it is just more performative in Canada because, yes, Canada is one of the few countries where abortion is legal at every stage without restrictions. That's if you can find a place to do it, because there aren't too many clinics that will provide it, and no clinics that were provided after a certain amount of weeks. I believe it's like, yeah, there's a certain amount of weeks, like in the third trimester or something like that. There's no clinics in Canada that actually have the ability to provide you with that abortion, which means you have to travel to the States to do that. And then it depends on your insurance and stuff like that, if it's going to get covered, because abortion clinics or places where you can get abortions aren't covered under Canadian healthcare insurance plans, the ones that people rely on the most. So a lot of abortion clinics aren't covered. So if you have to go to a clinic that provides it that isn't covered because it's not available in your province or something like that, then you may get charged for it. Or if you have to travel out of province. So if I were to go to Manitoba to get a procedure because I can't get it done here in Ontario, my Ontario healthcare should still cover it. There's a way to work around it, unless it's for an abortion. So it's not as available as people think it is up here. Yeah, I remember when I was canvassing back when I was trying to participate in politics. And I came across a mailbox and somebody had a sticker on it. Something about, oh, what was the exact phrase? Something, it was along the lines of like, you need to choose life because your mother did, or something like that. And all I remember thinking is like, no, actually, a lot of our mothers didn't have the choice. And what does that do to a person when they grow up realizing that they were an unwanted pregnancy, but their parents had no choice in actually having that baby. So yeah, it's but I will remember to link that article. I'm always so bad at remembering that sort of thing. I don't know if I want to get into this one as well. It's a little bit related. Oh, right, I was reading chat. See, this is where I get scatterbrained really easily. Clarence the liar. Sandy, did you know that I never knew you did Rebel HQ, even though I watched all the shows? I only learned about you from MR and your YouTube channel. I'd love to have supported you. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was, I have a video about that in my complaints about how I could understand not guest hosting, that they want to make sure I'm a little bit more screen ready before I'm live on on the shows. Totally get that. But to never be mentioned at all that there's a Canadian contributor over at Rebel HQ, go check her out, and all that sort of stuff, to never once have been mentioned or acknowledged, even when they were reading out messages from people saying they wanted to see Canadian stories or more international coverage. That is really, that was difficult to, you know, to understand. But then seeing people who were becoming guest hosts, Rebel HQ contributors who started after me, who has smaller online presence than me, guest co-hosting already, and I still wasn't allowed. Because I do get the feeling if the wider TYT audience knew I existed there, my numbers would have been a lot better than what they were. Nadia Yvette Chambers, that's right. The right's been lying about their motives for so long. There are stacks of lies, etc. Yeah. If I got pregnant, I'd die slowly from heart failure due to a coronary defect and severe anemia, and no one would do shit. Yeah, because as the Rebecca Watson video in the case of that woman in Texas shows, even when the doctors are saying this can, damage you, it can cost the parent her life and all that sort of stuff, even then the courts were against her. Some courts were against her, but then the higher ups were still trying to charge her and stuff. So it just goes to show that when we said that those exemptions wouldn't exist, we were right, which I don't like being right about. Brenda Knoll. That's it. It was Knoll. I'm sure the states would still require whatever waiting periods they've enacted. Yeah. And Lori Morgan, you still have to get approval prior to out of province surgeries. Yeah. You can't just go out of province to get medical care. It has to be approved beforehand, or else it won't get covered by by the provincial health insurance. It's not, yeah, healthcare in Canada is not universal, not by a long shot. And also, Indigenous peoples do not get the same healthcare as we do, as I do. Because they fall under federal jurisdiction, not provincial. And there's been battles over it. There's who was it? Jordan. Yeah, Jordan. Jordan's principal. So Jordan's principle was enacted when an Indigenous child named Jordan, the province and the federal government were arguing over who would cover his health bills. And while they were busy arguing over that, he died when he could have been saved if he had just gotten the care that he needed. And so Jordan's principle was put into place where it's like, okay, we'll give the children the care first and then argue over who has to pay for it. It's something that I've actually been wanting to go over more detail in one of my videos, or even during a live stream if anybody's interested, because I just remember how heartbreaking that was when I heard about that and other stories of First Nations peoples having to suffer in hospitals because they can't get the same care as I would get if I was in the hospital. Okay, so let's get back to, I think I'm just going to show this. It's another thread that I find is really important that's kind of connected. And I can add it more when I'm talking about, you know, when Doug Ford decided to revert Ontario's sex ed back to the 90s. The last statement is, as an adult, you can easily navigate the world without being able to understand Shakespeare or quadratic equations with little to no consequences. However, almost every single young person will eventually become a sexually active adult. And it's just about the need to have proper sex ed for children growing up. And another good, it's not a long thread, but I've already went through a whole bunch of threads. I don't want to go through another one. And I might, like I said, add this one to one about what Doug Ford did. And then that kind of leads into this story. I'm trying to make this all like segue properly when I do these things. So Florida sex scandals tarnishes GOP power couple and party's credibility. So here we have this woman helped to make the Mums of Liberty, or whatever it's called, which is an anti-queer organization, you know, want to get rid of all the books in the schools and stuff like that. And then she was found to have threesomes with another woman. Well, I think a threesome at all with no matter who the gender is, they would have looked negatively on, and she lost her position. There's also some other really horrible details in this story. Mike from the Humanist Report did a really good video on this recently where you get all the details. And I'm only showing this to give a little bit of background for this.
Our first ever interaction.
That's a good TikTok about somebody standing up to this. So I believe I should be able to show this without getting copywritten, because it is a TikTok, and I encourage everyone to go check out their channel. Let's see.
Action was when Bridget, our first ever interaction was when you retweeted a hate article about me from The Nationalist while I was a Sarasota County school student. You are a reminder that some people view politics as a service to others, while some view it as an opportunity for themselves. On this board, you have spent public funds that could have been used to increase teacher pay, to change our district lines for political gain, remove books from schools, target trans and queer children, erase Black history, and elevate your political career, all while sending your children to private schools because you do not believe in the public school system that you've been leading. My question is, why doesn't an elected official using our money to harm our students and our teachers for her gain seem to matter as much to us as her having a threesome does? Bridget Ziegler, you do not deserve to be on the Sarasota County School Board, but you do not deserve to be removed from it for having a threesome. That defeats the lesson we've been trying to teach you, which is that a politician's job is to serve their community, not to police personal lives. So, to be extra clear, Bridget, you deserve to be fired from your job because you are terrible at your job, not because you had sex with a woman.
you see, the reason why I feel like all this is connected is because the people like Bridget, they're the same people that want to ban the sex ed, that they are anti-queer, that they want to make it impossible for people to have abortions unless it's, they're white and wealthy and can travel without a problem. It's all the same people at the top of that. The right wingers that just don't believe in people learning enough about themselves, because a lot of those right wingers will also have, queer relationships that they try to hide. Unfortunately, a lot of them, do are into CP. Not all of them, not nearly all of them, but it is quite astonishing how many of them we find out get arrested for that sort of horrific stuff. And it's all the same groups of people trying to control others, trying to do this while they're doing whatever they want behind the scenes. And it's just so sickening that we still live in a world where this is an issue. Like, I was so pissed off with Doug Ford when he reverted the sex ed curriculum back to the 90s in Ontario, because so much has changed since then. And just even talking about things like consent for children and what that means, it helps keep them safe. Like, I remember kids violating other kids' consent all the time. And it was just boys being boys back then. And if people had been taught what consent actually is and what that meant, and that it's not okay for a boy to kiss a girl against her will and all that sort of stuff, like, so many things would have been different. And to let children know, certain things, so that if there's an adult in their life that is being inappropriate and harming them and being abusive, they know what it is. But they don't want the children to know. They want to keep them in this little bubble where they know nothing about sex. And when you know nothing about sex, then you end up getting pregnant a lot sooner because you don't know anything about birth control, which just leads to often girls, people with uteruses, ending up, with children far, far younger than they ever intended. And since the burden is usually still put on them to raise the children and stuff, their careers are put on hold, their education is put on hold, their lives are put on hold, while the person who impregnated them is free to go off and do whatever they want. I just get so pissed off that we are still in a world where this is even up for debate. It shouldn't be. But how about we get into something that's a little bit on the lighter writer side. And when I say writer, I don't mean right wing. I mean like correct. Correct. I haven't read the article, so I'm actually super interested to read the article, even though I said I didn't want to keep on reading articles, because this is super interesting. And we'll get to that in just a moment. I'm just going to quickly check some chat. What won't you tell me, Christy Zed? Somebody said that they won't tell me something. What are you not going to tell me? Well, the Silver Samaritan says TYT is run by a liberal, cosplay as a rebel, and I'm tired people acting like he's anything else. It's like, you don't have to tell me something I already know. Yes, Looney Tunes 9000. That was an excellent speech by that young man. And it's, a lot of people, there's some people on the right there, or on the left, that are like the reactionary left and all this sort of stuff. And it's because of young men like him that I'm like, we should never ban white cis men from being at the table, because a lot of them can still bring important things, whereas a lot of people, it's like, oh, well, this, and they shouldn't say anything about anything that they're not involved with and stuff. And sadly, one of the advantages still is that people will pay more attention to them and actually take them seriously and listen to what they have to say versus if that had been a young woman saying that. So there's pros and cons, but you know, I grew up in a world where young men and boys would never say anything like that. And it's just, I love how much more free men are getting and boys are getting. You know, that they can actually talk about their own sexuality, that they can openly support other people without looking like they're being weak or woke or things of that sort. Because it is a collaboration. You know, we support each other in the same goals when it comes to genders and stuff of that sort. Like, women are men's best allies against the patriarchy, but men are also good allies to women against the patriarchy. It's all, there was a TED talk about that once that I watched. I hate when I remember something from so long ago that I don't have bookmarked, so I can't reference. Luckily, I had that one article from 2012 bookmarked. uh, uh, the Silver Samaritan. Oh my God, the discourse around consent in the 90s was the shit so compared to today. Ah, Chrissy said, LOL, Sandy. I meant we won't tell you about the video because you were concerned you may not be able to play it. Tell me about what video? The one that I just showed that maybe I shouldn't be playing it? Was I not allowed to play it because I just played it? Or is there a video that you want me to play that I shouldn't be allowed to play because it's not allowed? Darn it, you're just making me ask more questions. Okay, well, let's get on to the other news that I wanted to really hit on that I'm super interested to learn a little bit more about. Because you see, here in Canada, we don't have a First Amendment. We don't have founders, which so many people on the right in Canada will say, well, we have a First Amendment right to free speech. No, we don't. No. Or some people say, well, the founders intended this country to be. No, we didn't have that. We're not Americans. And this is where my frustration comes in, that Canadians know less about Canadian politics than they do about American politics, and just the immense influence American politics have over us. I'm just seeing if there's like an answer to that, all those questions that I just had. Anyway, focus. Yeah, because in Canada, we have freedom of expression. We do not have free speech. And so there was this interesting article that came out, and John Thompson posted it to Twitter saying, to be clear, right-wing trolls are freaking out after learning you can't call drag performers groomers, then pretend you're really just expressing an opinion about journalists having an agenda to expose children to sexual predators. Glad to be done. And here is the article. So Press Progress, reliable source. Let's make that bigger. New court decision reinforces that there is no public interest in interest in speech that exposes vulnerable groups to hate. Believe it or not, anonymous right-wing trolls can, in fact, get sued for baselessly calling people groomers on the internet. Thank you, my income is going to be totally fine from this point on. Yep. It's almost like a second career here. While many Canadians find this obvious, right-wing social media personalities appear surprised by a recent court decision in Ontario that takes away what they apparently assume was their freedom to call random strangers groomers and pedophiles online. Last year, Rainbow Alliance Drayden, a 2S LGBTQIA+ community, for those of you who don't know the because I hear it more often in Canada than I do the United States. The 2S stands for Two-Spirit, and that is for Indigenous communities. Community group in Drayton, Ontario launched a defamation lawsuit against Brian Webster, a Thunder Bay blogger who runs a local Facebook page. The lawsuit was prompted by Webster's anonymous post reacting to a CBC News article about a drag storytime event organized by the plaintiffs. Ask yourself why these people need to perform for children, Webster wrote. Groomers. That's the agenda. Last week, Ontario Superior Court of Justice issued a decision rejecting an anti-SLAPP motion Webster filed, claiming the lawsuit against him was a gag proceeding designed to silence me and punish me through the improper use of the courts. In its decision, the court found Webster's statement failed a basic public interest test since perpetrating hurtful myths and stereotypes about vulnerable members in our society does not represent speech anti-SLAPP rules are intended to protect. I agree with the plaintiffs that perpetuating such stereotypes and myths about members of the 2S LGBTQI community is not public interest speech, the decision explains. It is not a matter about which the community has a genuine interest and genuine stake in knowing. If the post merely questions the propriety of drag story time for children or expressing his opinion that drag story time is not appropriate for children, I may have been inclined to find that matter with social commentary and public interest speech. The court also noted Webster appeared to have no valid defense since his statements were not recognizable as an opinion, and there appeared to be no factual biases for the allegation. So this is the difference between saying, they are grooming children versus, in my opinion, this feels like, they're grooming children when they do this sort of thing. One is a statement, one is an opinion. The decision has been met with alarm and concern inside right-wing circles where online rhetoric targeting the LGBTQ plus community as groomers and pedophiles has increased dramatically over the last year or two. Oh, gee, I wonder why that is. Yeah, I wonder why it has increased so dramatically over the last little while, huh? Mike Campbell, an account affiliated with a right-wing counter-signal website, warned its followers that the ruling sets the stage for defamation lawsuits against anyone who uses, go away, the term groomers. While Shadow Davis, a right-wing podcaster, similarly warned, do not use the word groomer to describe drag queens. Yeah, attention, do not use the word #groomer to describe drag queens. Bad precedent out of Thunder Bay today as an Ontario Superior Court Justice rules anti-SLAPP laws do not apply in this case. We should presume this is offline and online. Yeah, presume it. Other right-wing accounts variously reacted by describing the move as Orwellian, lamenting the death of free speech and even contemplating leaving Canada for good. Oh, please do that. Just go. Can you like, oh no, you're going to leave Canada because you can't accuse people of being a groomer? Go. By all means. I will help you pack your bags. Some rejected the authority of the court altogether, while others questioned if the judge herself had something to hide. Because of course, if they're going to hold up the Constitution of Canada, then that must mean that they have something to hide, because that's, gender, sexuality, orientation, all of that stuff is, Canadians are protected under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is the thing we go by, not the First Amendment. We go by the Charters of Rights and Freedoms. Another asked if they could also get in trouble by calling someone a pedo. Douglas Johnson, the lawyer for the plaintiff, says he hopes the decision will send a message to those pushing outmoded conspiracy theories targeting the 2S LGBTQ community. I think in this article they've made reference to this. differently every time I've read it. Sometimes it has the I, sometimes it has the A, sometimes it has the plus. That's why I tend to just say queer. The decision is significant because, to my knowledge, it's the first case that looked at this commentary we are seeing online describing members of the drag community and more broadly to us LGBTQ folks or trans people as groomers, Judson told Press Progress. Hopefully this will stand as an example of how our laws protect members of vulnerable communities and that are subject to very targeted online hate speech and harassing commentary that is causing reputational damage and frankly distress in their everyday lives. The identity of the defendant, Johnson, obtained court orders requiring Meta and Bell to produce subscriber information and IP address linking the anonymous Facebook page to Webster. Oh, wow. So it got to the point where the courts were actually like, yeah, this Facebook page that's been harassing you, this is who's doing it. You know, they shouldn't be able to hide behind anonymous accounts if they're going to defame people and accuse them of being horrible things when there's no basis for it, other than the person accusing them is just a bigoted asshole who wants to, in my opinion, is a bigoted asshole who wants to harm other people's. I think that's something that happens to be the people engaged in very freewheeling expression online that is of hateful and unsavory nature without realizing there is a trail of breadcrumbs data that connect them to their device back to those comments, despite that they might be using a random Twitter handle or making efforts to hide their names. Why hide your names? If you believe this so much, why not just be out? Why not just say it? If I'm not hiding who I am, why are you hiding who you are? Eagle Canada, one of Canada's largest 2S LGBTQ plus advocacy groups, and an intervener in the case, said in public statement that this decision is significant in demonstrating that calling drag performers groomers is an accusation of child sexual abuse, that people targeted by that accusation have the right to take legal action to protect their reputations. This is an important decision for the 2S LGBTQI community. It's been different. Like every time it's been different. That comes at a time when we are facing unprecedented levels of hate, harassment, and violence fueled by the spread of misinformation and disinformation, Eagle said. So a case before the Ontario Superior Court of Justice that Eagle Canada has intervened in Rainbow Alliance and Drayden Webster court ruling that the groomer 2S LGBTQI community. In effectum, Eagle argued Webster's statement recycles the age-old and harmful trope that conflates 2S LGBTQI people with pedophiles and sexual predators, and asked the court to reject the notion that the public has any interest in being exposed to hateful speech. Exposure to hatred or contempt constitutes serious harm, particularly when there is evidence that the expression has fomented hateful responses and threats of violence. Eagle noted, adding, there is no public interest in protecting expression that badly asserts that 2S LGBTQI individuals are groomers. In court documents, Webster had argued that he had simply expressed the opinion and CBC had expressed the opinion the CBC was grooming, adding that current events and CBC's promotion of drag performers to children are matter of great public interest. Webster produced a copy of the tweet by Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre calling for defunding CBC as evidence his statement related to matters of public interest. Why is it so weird? No, Pierre Poilievre wanted the CBC to be funded because he was like, oh, it's a It's propaganda for Justin Trudeau's Liberal government without, ever looking at the Wikipedia page for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. I talked a lot about this in my last video, so that's just Pierre being, a right-wing shill. Like, just saying whatever he can on the right wing to make things seem bad. Judson believes this case, along with the recent Supreme Court of Canada decision involving anti-LGBTQ plus school trustee Barry Neufeld, show developments in the area of anti-SLAPP and defamation that is recognizing the social context of historically marginalized communities. This is something that I do appreciate about Canadian courts. Not all the time, but a lot of the times, they actually do stick to the Constitution and interpret it in modern ways. Like, it's not something... I know Americans have this habit of going back and saying, well, the amendments and all this sort of stuff, and this is the exact wording of something that was written like 200, 300 years ago or whatever. Whereas, like, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is very new in Canada, and it gets updated every now and then. And we have courts that can often, like, it's sad to say, surprisingly good decisions. And it's surprising because so often they're made political, but to the Canadian courts with this, it's not a political issue. It is a human rights issue. The commonality between the two cases appears to be that the court is recognizing that the social context in which expression occurs matters, Judson said, explaining that in the Neufeld case, the Supreme Court recognized that the social value of counter-speech or speaking up in support of historically marginalized communities. I don't know anything about that court case. I'll look into it later. In our case, we see court unwilling to even recognize this type of expression that is smearing people who the publisher doesn't even know. And it suggests that they are pedophiles or engaged in some sort of lurid sexual predation targeting young people. The court is saying that it is not expression that is connected to a matter of public interest. Their first question judges the anti-SLAPP case need to establish is whether or not a statement relates to a matter of public interest. Judson said it's significant the judge rejected the idea that calling someone groomer has any public interest valued because it clarifies the very concept of public interest is not content neutral, but rooted in charter values. There we go. That's just what I was talking about. It's not a political thing. It's rooted in the charter values. I think it is really important that this was thrown out in the first step because it means that we're not really going to toy around with the notion that smearing people with this vile language is remotely connected to someone that serves to something that serves the public interest, that relates to a matter of public interest and so forth. The defeat of Webster's anti-SLAPP motion means the case can now proceed to a full trial to determine if he defamed the plaintiffs. The plaintiffs are seeking over $190,000 in damages. I hope they win. I hope they win. And then I know that I can go back through all my comments and look at all the people who call me groomer. Actually, I don't get attacked too much, so it's not an issue for me, but I have friends who could definitely use this. So let's go over freedom of expression in Canada just a little bit. I'm not going to read the whole Wikipedia article. That would be a bit much. So again, we do not have a First Amendment in Canada. Okay, we do not have free speech. We have freedom of expression. Freedom of expression in Canada is protected as a fundamental freedom by Section 2 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. However, in practice, the Charter permits the government to enforce reasonable limits censoring speech. Hate speech, obscenity, and defamation are common categories of restricted speech in Canada. During the 1970 October crisis, the War Measure Act was used to limit speech from militant political parties. Reasonable limits. Freedom of expression in Canada is not absolute. Section 1 of the Charter allows the government to pass laws that limit free expression so long as the limits are reasonable and can be justified in a free democratic society. Hate speech, what refers to the advocacy of incitement of genocide or violence against particular defined racial, ethnic, we're going to get into that in a moment. Broad term referring to other things such as, promoting abuse of children and stuff like that are two examples that gain significant attention from the media in public discourse. In the province of Quebec, freedom of expression is restricted in the interest of protecting French language. Yeah, there are language laws in Canada. Go to Quebec. You'll find out what those language laws are. Outdoor commercial signage may only use English text if it's half the size of French text under the Charter of French language, or business can face financial penalties. The Supreme Court ruled the signage regulation is a reasonable limit of the freedom of expression. So we go over that. So in Canada, even our freedom of expression is not absolute, because if it is something that's, kind of goes into the territory of hate speech or is not in the public interest, that sort of thing, it can be restricted. And we were just given some examples, like you can't just accuse people of being groomers, because everything that's attached to that and the harm that can be brought on that person for being accused of being that. But something I wanted to get into, so we have hate speech laws here in Canada. So there's certain type of speech that is considered hate speech, which is things that are not allowed to be spoken of or to publicly. Like if you think these things in private, whatever, if you have private conversations with this, whatever, it is what it is. So let's go to like inciting or promoting hatred. So publicly inciting hatred makes it an offense to communicate statements in a public space which incite hatred against an identifiable group where it is likely to lead to a breach of the peace. The Crown prosecutor can proceed either by indictment or by summary process. The maximum penalty is imprisonment of not more than 2 years. There is no minimum punishment. So that's one of them. Confiscation of hate propaganda. Section 320 allows the judge to confiscate publications which appear to have hate propaganda after due notice the apparent owner of the material and the owner of the premise where the material is found, and after hearing. Section 320.1 allows the judge to make similar orders with respect to confiscation of hate propaganda stored electronically and order to hate propaganda, blah, blah, blah. The part that I really wanted to get to here, though, is actually up here. Section 318, advocating genocide. Section 318 makes it an offense to advocate or promote genocide, which is defined as killing members of an identifiable group or inflicting conditions of life on a group which are calculated to bring about the physical destruction of the group. The offense is indictable and carries a maximum penalty of imprisonment exceeding 5 years. There is no minimum punishment. The consent of the provincial attorney general is required for a charge to be laid under this section. Okay, so why I wanted to get to that. So here in Canada, I cannot sit here and publicly advocate for a genocide. That is a big no-no. That is part of our hate speech laws, and I can get in a lot of trouble for doing that. So if we go that route, then wouldn't the government that is saying Israel has a right to defend itself and giving Israel the means to commit genocide in Gaza, then shouldn't that technically be illegal here? Like, I'm not a scholar on this, but I find it very ironic that Canada can participate or assist genocides, but promoting a genocide verbally is illegal. Because there's what's still currently happening to the indigenous peoples. And then there's the genocides that we give money to, such as what's happening in Gaza. And there are genocides we just turn a blind eye to, like what's happening in Yemen. So we're not allowed to advocate for that. So by saying that Israel has every right to do whatever it wants in Gaza, isn't that advocating for a genocide? Shouldn't that be illegal then in Canada? Shouldn't our leaders not be allowed to advocate for a genocide in Gaza if we have these hate speech laws like that? Like, how is it that it's illegal to advocate for it, but totally illegal for the government to participate in it? I'm just saying. Seems a little unbalanced there. Just trying to find comments that I know what you're talking about and isn't part of a conversation. I think somebody was trying to talk to me. Clarence the Liar says at Sandy, which won't actually catch my attention necessarily. It has to be left of the box on there. I should hope you are. Those cats must take a lot of brushing. Abernathy, actually. He's a Bengal mix. The amount of fur that comes out of that cat, even though he's short fur, oh my god. Let's see. So just some interesting things happening here in Canada. Okay, I see lots of comments, but I don't necessarily know what they're in context to, and some of them looks like they're part of conversations, and I tend to want to read comments that I know what the context is and stuff. Clarence Liar, I wish we had that here, freedom of expression versus freedom of speech. Speech can absolutely be violence and or incitement to violence. Yeah. Like I'm quite okay with not having absolute free speech. Often the people who want absolute free speech are those who want to incite violence and hatred and target and harass people. Okay, so let's get to, let's see, where, oh my god, look at the time. Okay, wow. I said I wasn't going to ramble, and there's like so much I want to get to still. But there was something else that I actually have in the title, so I should get to that. My opinion on what's happening with Trump. Let's do that, shall we? So before we get started with that, I'm just going to poison the well a little bit. With this, Trump says immigrations are poisoning the blood of our country. Biden campaign likens comments to Hitler. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why he should not be a presidential candidate. And the fact that he came out later and said, you know, like, don't give Hitler credit for things that I came up with. Like, I totally came up with these things on my own. And I know it sounds a lot like what Hitler was saying, but I did this. And it's like, well, they say great minds think alike. So I suppose the opposite can be true as well. You know, that is not something I would want to even be in a category of being able to, like, but I said it too, independent of him. And just horrible, horrible person who should not be running for president. And let's see, there are some consequences apparently. So breaking, Colorado Supreme Court bans Trump from state ballot under Constitution's insurrection clause. So basically they're saying that he can't be put on the ballot to see if he can become the Republican candidate, something like that. When it comes down to it, in Colorado, it doesn't necessarily matter too much because from what I hear, it's a blue state. So even if he was banned from even running as a presidential candidate there, then it wouldn't necessarily make a difference overall. So this is just like he can't be a candidate for the Republican leadership so far. But I would imagine that if you can't be a candidate for the Republican leadership, you probably shouldn't be a candidate for the actual president. And so there's lots of saying, like, if he is disqualified, like how much of part, like it's apparent to everyone. Well, in my opinion, he was helping with the insurrection by inciting people into it, and there's lots of stuff behind the scenes that we don't know of yet that say more directly that he was involved. So that is all interesting. And there's a lot of people like starting to, what is this? Oh, right. I was thinking about watching this with all you.
This
'Cause I
news is
haven't actually
fun.
watched this yet. It's from Democracy Now! Colorado disqualifies Trump from ballot, triggering battle over Constitution insurrection clause. It's getting pretty late, so I don't want to go over this video right now, even though I know I should be allowed because I see the serfs go over Democracy Now! All the time. And so, let me know in the chat if you want to watch this article or watch this with me. Let me know in the chat. Let me know if we want to go over this together. I can increase the speed. Not seeing anyone so far say anything because there is a delay. But let me know if you want to go over this video clip with me. It's just under 8 minutes and I would increase the speed. So we have My Dogs Are Goth. I want to, so they want to. Clarence the Liar also wants to go over it. Okay, so that's enough. We'll go over this one so that we can get more details about this, and then I can give my opinion on what I see, where I see this going. Also, go check out Democracy Now! If you don't know of them. I'd be amazed if people in my audience don't know of Democracy Now! But really, really good news.
By viewers like you. Please support our work at democracynow.org/give. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
We turn now to Colorado, where the state Supreme Court has ruled in a 4-3 decision to bar Donald Trump from the state's 2024 presidential primary ballot because of his actions during the January 6th insurrection. In an unprecedented decision, the justices ruled that the former president is ineligible to appear on the ballot, citing the insurrection clause of the 14th Amendment, which was written to prevent Civil War Confederates from returning to government. Section 3 of the amendment states, quote, "No person shall hold any office, civil or military, under the United States, who, having previously taken an oath as an officer of the United States, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection," end quote.
And some people have already pointed out that the commander-in-chief or something, he's like technically, I think the president's the top person for the military or something like that. So definitely falls in this category for lots of different reasons, actually.
Quote, Trump has vowed to appeal the decision to the U.S. Supreme Court, where conservatives hold a 6-3 majority. Meanwhile, a number of other states are also considering barring Trump from the ballot.
We're joined now by the constitutional attorney, John Boniface, president of Free Speech for People, which has filed legal challenges to Trump's eligibility to appear on the ballot in a number of states, including Minnesota, Michigan, and Oregon. First, John, if you can talk about what happened in Colorado and respond to those who simply say, why let the courts decide? Why not let the voters decide? Why remove him from the ballot?
The courts should have some say in some of this. Like, there are restrictions on who can run in other aspects. And sometimes I just really hate this idea of, oh, we'll just let the voters decide. We'll just let the voters decide. And it's like, but he tried to get rid of democracy. Like, somebody like him shouldn't be allowed to run for president again if they don't believe in the democracy.
Well, thank you, Amy, for having me. This was a fantastic victory for our democracy and our Constitution. The Colorado Supreme Court got it right. Donald Trump is disqualified under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment for inciting, mobilizing, facilitating the insurrection on January 6th. Now,
Yeah, because I've heard some people say, oh, this shouldn't happen because, you know, there's going to be problems with Trump's base if this. It's like, no. On the left, we have been begging for consequences to the actions that these right-wingers keep on doing. And here we get one. Okay, let's not then just back down from it because it's like, oh, but his supporters might get really mad. It's like, no, this is what we were wanting, consequences to his actions. And this is hopefully just one of many consequences to what he's done.
Your question about why not let the voters decide, the fact is that our Constitution makes clear that you have to meet certain qualifications to run for president of the United States. That includes being of 35 years or more by the time of the inauguration, being a natural-born citizen, and not having taken an oath to defend and preserve the Constitution and then turned around and engaged in insurrection. And that is what Donald Trump did. He is disqualified under that critical constitutional provision. It's designed to protect our republic. The framers of the 14th Amendment placed it into the 14th Amendment after the Civil War to ensure that those who threaten the republic by taking that oath of office and then turning around and engaging in insurrection shall never hold public office again.
So, John Boniface, could you talk about where else similar decisions may be made? What other states are considering also potentially banning Trump?
Well, first, I want to say we congratulate our allies at Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington for their outstanding work in the Colorado case and achieving this victory. And we're proud to have helped catalyze the movement and the work around the country to uphold Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. At Free Speech for People, we have filed similar challenges to Donald Trump's eligibility in Minnesota, in Michigan, and in Oregon. And two of those cases, Michigan and Oregon, are now pending before their state Supreme Courts. Just yesterday, we notified both of those courts via supplemental authority letters of the Colorado decision and making clear of its application to our cases in Michigan and Oregon. And we have been also quite public that we intend to file additional challenges very soon in other key states. The key question here is now, what will the Supreme Court do? Will they take this case and how will they rule? But I also want to add another critical question is, what will election officials do all across the country? They have the mandate to follow the mandate of the Constitution, to follow what the constitutional requirements are here for placing candidates on the presidential primary ballot. And that includes Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And they now have a state Supreme Court ruling making clear that Donald Trump engaged in insurrection and is disqualified, and they ought to follow that ruling and bar him from their state ballots as well.
So it seems pretty straightforward to me, but if, you know, the courts actually paid attention to law and not politics, it seems pretty straightforward that Trump shouldn't be allowed to be a candidate. It's just, but unfortunately in the States, as I was talking about earlier, far more political in the courts than Canada tends to be.
I want to read to you a quote from former Biden administration official Tim Wu, who's a professor at Columbia University. He wrote on the platform X, quote, "This may be an unpopular post, but I think we need to realize that using undemocratic means to fight candidate Trump increases the odds of losing democracy itself. I don't mean you should ignore clear-cut violations of the law, for example, accounting fraud in the New York case, but anything that feels like a reach is dangerous," Tim Wu said. If you could respond to that, John, and also the fact that Biden was asked about the Colorado decision on Wednesday, and this was his response.
Trump an insurrectionist, sir?
Well, I think certainly it's self-evident.
So in case I was too quiet, the reporter asked, is Trump an insurrectionist? And I think he just said...
Certainly it's self-evident. You saw it all. Now whether the 14th Amendment applies, I'll let the court make that decision. But he certainly supported an insurrection. And no question about it. None. Zero. And he seems to be doubling down on about everything.
So, John, your response to what?
See, if you just play it a little bit faster, Biden almost sounds like he's coherent. Because that actually sounded a little bit more like normal speech from Biden.
President Biden said, and then also Columbia law professor Tim Wu.
Well, just on Columbia law professor Tim Wu, and I admire his work, but I think he's wrong on this matter. This is not an anti-democratic fight in the courts. This is, in fact, a fight to protect our democracy and to protect our Constitution. We cannot ignore what the clear language of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is, and the reasons why the framers of the 14th Amendment placed that into the Constitution. This was right after the Civil War. There were ex-Confederates who sought to remain in power or to attain power, and a clear decision was made by those who drafted the 14th Amendment, by the Congress that passed it, and the states that enacted it, that those who take an oath of office to defend our Constitution and then turn around and engage in insurrection, as the Confederates did, are barred from ever holding public office again. They represent a threat to our republic. And now we have the second insurrection in our nation's history on January 6, 2021. Donald Trump incited that insurrection. He mobilized it. He engaged in that insurrection, and he is barred from holding future public office. This is about protecting our democracy. If we ignore this provision of the Constitution, we make it a dead letter, and we set a very dangerous precedent going forward that people can ignore their oath of office and engage in future insurrections. As to President Biden's comments, I think he's absolutely right that Donald Trump has proven to be an insurrectionist, and the courts must uphold Section 3 of the 14th Amendment.
John Boniface, I want to thank you so much for being with us, president of Free Speech for People, which has filed legal challenges to Trump's eligibility to appear on the ballot in a number of states, including Minnesota, Michigan, and Oregon. Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today at democracynow.org/give.
Okay, so I've been hearing a lot of discourse about this. Like if it gets to the Supreme Court and the way that it was picked by Donald Trump, like there's 3 people there that was picked by Donald Trump. I believe it's 3 that he picked, something like that. Horrible. It's a very right-leaning court. And people are worried that they're going to vote based on politics versus based on the very logical stuff that they were just saying, the consequences and stuff. And so a lot of people are saying that it's just going to get thrown out at the Supreme Court. Or it might not even get to the court and things of that sort. And I'm not entirely sure they would vote in Trump's favor. And here's why. A lot of the people in the right who have the power, they all see Trump as a loose cannon. He's a problem because Trump is he's more of a dictator. Like he's more in it about himself. He wants to be leader. Whereas a lot of these other right-wingers have the party vision. You know, they want the party to succeed. They want the party to take over. Whereas Trump is just very singular in that. He wants to be the person in control and have the power. And it's unlikely he would want to share that power around. And we've seen him go after people for just disagreeing with him and things of that sort. But it is a much smarter move on the right wings to make it more about the party and not just one individual, because, you know, if something happens to Trump, then all of his support goes, like that support kind of goes wherever Trump goes. Whereas if it's the party, then it's less, you know, reliant on who's the figurehead at the time, who's speaking. So there's a lot of people within the right that don't want Trump because he's a moron. He can't get things done. And he's problematic for so many reasons. And, you know, the court is the way it is. It's going to be right wing now for like at least a generation because he picked nice young people to replace the people who got out. They don't need him anymore for the court. Like that's the thing. They don't need to play favors to him anymore. They don't need to support him. And it wouldn't surprise me then if they vote against Trump for this, because then that means they can get more competent people in his place. But it's not just that. They have plausible deniability because they can say, well, it's a blue state that did this. It's not, you know, we didn't want to do this. And that's if it even gets to the Supreme Court, because they might not even rule on time for it to matter one way or the other. But right now they have complete plausible deniability. Well, this was the left, the blue states, taking advantage. They're doing all of this. You can blame it on them and actually help bolster their side. And then they can run candidates that aren't Trump, who now say, I will do everything like Trump. I will help, fulfill his dream, his wish, his mission, and stuff like that, and have far more competent people in that position to do that. You guys get what do you get what I'm saying with this? You get my meaning? That this is actually could be worse. Like, no, Trump should not be on the ballot, but I could see the right using it to their advantage for sure, one way or the other. Because, yeah, a lot of people say, well, then he's going to go third party if he can't run as a Republican candidate. That doesn't mean he's going to maintain his base, because it doesn't take much thought to put into, well, we don't want those evil Democrats to get into power, and there's no chance that Trump will become the leader as a third party candidate. But here we have over in the Republican Party, this leader here is saying that they're just like Trump, only meaner or competent or younger or something like that. But they're just like Trump, and they really wish that Trump had this opportunity to run as the Republican leader, but those darn Democrats wouldn't let him. And so some of Trump's supporters for that third party would be like, yeah, but we don't want the Democrats to win. This is another version of Trump, so we're still going to vote Republican. So he might not siphon off enough right-wing votes to make a difference. And it benefits the right to not have him run as president, because right now, he's like the only person that could lose to Biden. Some saying Ron DeSantis, but pretty much Trump is the only candidate that would lose to Biden in this situation. So to not have him as the Republican candidate would help their party get into power. And like I said, there's an establishment within the right wing, and it is about party power, not just an individual. It's about their ideology, their rhetoric, maintaining supreme control through their party. So that's kind of where I'm thinking this is. I don't know. I'm curious if people, what other people think of what I just said. 0 PE, some say it sets a bad precedence, others say it will spark a civil war. I don't think it's a bad precedence, because again, it's actually consequences to their actions. Like, it's actually a good precedent. Like, if you help to incite a insurrection and you partake in one, then you should not be allowed to run as president. I would like that to go forward. I would like that to be a president from this time on. So I don't see it as a bad precedent. And we already know the right will always try to find any way to apply rules that don't apply to the left. It's and 0 PE, I say kick his ass off of all ballots. Yeah, he should not be able to be a candidate. Like, if you try to dismantle democracy as you know it, you should not be allowed to be a candidate. And I'd like that to apply up here in Canada. All the conservative leaders that were partaking in the Freedom Convoy, that was, sort of a version of that. Not quite as drastic, but there was that kind of attempt to get Trudeau out of power. And it's one thing to be a conservative leader and say, talk to the people, try to understand what they're saying and stuff. But it's another thing if they help to fund it and participate and encourage it. Like, those are the differences. I'm not against a politician going and speaking in front of the crowd It's when they take it a bit step further. And so even in Canada, I think if a politician is found to have actually participated in that freedom convoy, then why should they be allowed to run for office again when they were trying to get a leader out in a very undemocratic way? And I don't think that alone would spark a civil war. It would spark a lot of, I don't doubt it would spark some violence, but I don't think it would get to the point of a civil war. But I do fear about more isolated terrorist attacks, more isolated violent attacks from people, but not like an overall, civil war. James Fox, the very falsified idea that we support that creep, either Trump or Biden, is so absurd. We don't want either. Just FYI for those who do not live here. Yes, I know most, like all the progressives that I know down in the States, I know you don't want either of them in power, but it's harm reduction. Biden won't be as evil as Trump, but I know if you could snap your fingers, if you it would take the power of Thanos' gauntlet in order to make this happen. But to get rid of both of them as candidates and put in somebody competent in the Democratic Party, I know so many people would do that. But the reality is, at this point, unless Biden comes to the end of his life, he's going to be the candidate. And the same with Trump. And it's a horrible situation to be in. Nadia, at least assuming the environmental apocalypse, etc., doesn't render it all irrelevant. Yeah, there's also that. I've been talking a bit about that in my last couple of videos. It's going to be nearly 10 degrees in my area, 10 degrees Celsius in my area in the last week of December. Yeah, I saw a tree at my window. It had buds. That's not good. The tree should be hibernating right now. It should not be budding. Bad Lefty, I'm not sure Biden can beat any of them right now, but I agree that Trump will drive more Dems to the polls than any of the rest of them. Yeah, like Biden is the only one who could potentially beat, like Trump could lose to. I'm getting my words mixed up. Even though Biden stands a chance of beating Trump, and every other candidate that they could place would definitely beat Biden, there's still a very strong possibility Trump can also beat Biden. It's just if any Republican candidate were to lose to Biden, it would be Trump. Every other candidate would easily win over Biden. So they have lots of incentive not to have Trump as the actual candidate. And like I said, the Supreme Court, it's already packed. And as soon as, if they can get their way and they can get another Republican win anyway, then it still secures them in the future and so on and so forth. Like they can still get to where they want to be without Trump. But they can also make it's almost like they can make it more legitimate without Trump. They can do it through more official means without Trump. And Trump is just, he's so unpredictable even for them on the right that it's hard to get him to do what they need him to do for their gains. Rachel Atwood, I'm bothered that Williamson got kicked off my primary ballot here in Massachusetts, and she's not going to win, but she deserved to be on the ballot. I believe the different states have different requirements for what's needed to be on the ballot, and that's unfortunate. Like there's a lot of things about who can and cannot be a candidate in the states that bug me, because Cenk Uygur is running for president still, apparently, even though you haven't really heard much from him about that lately. Even though he's not a natural born citizen, naturalized citizen or whatever, and he thinks that he can fight that and blah, blah, blah. Personally, I think you don't have to be born in the United States in order to run as president. You can run for leadership here without actually being born in this country. And I think that's totally fine. I do think it's wrong for Cenk to run as president and get money for a presidential campaign before it's proven that he can run as a president. It's, I don't think that's right for him to do that. Like, if he wants to fight it, he has to fight that first. He has to actually make sure he can be the candidate, and then if he wants to run, you know, you do you type thing. I keep on scrolling up and scrolling down because sometimes when I'm scrolling down, it will jump down to the bottom, and I'm trying to find comments again that I know what's being spoken of. Yeah, so I don't know. Okay, so let's start to wind this down. Those were some of the main stories I wanted to get to. I will be having my regular live stream, which has not been anything remotely close to regular lately. So my new regular live stream at 6 p.m. on Sunday, because I'm thinking I'm moving it to 6 p.m. during the week, and then I might as well just do it on Sunday just to have a consistent time. So it will be a regular stream on Sunday for me because I still have lots of stuff to get to, lots of interesting stuff, and I'm sure more will happen between now and then anyway. And I'm not 100% sure yet, but I'm thinking of just doing a very casual live stream on Christmas, Monday, because I know there's a lot of people who, this is a rough time of year, and a lot of people are left alone. And I know personally how lonely and isolating it can be to not have friends and family to go to. So I might be going to my mom and sister's place Christmas Day, but I want to go during daylight hours, which means I would have to leave there by 4 to get a meal. So I might be seeing them Christmas Day. We just talked about it today, so it's not even set in stone, because it's always weather dependent too, because it's a bit of a hazardous drive as the weather is anywhere off. So when I get back, I'm thinking of just doing a very casual live stream for people so that some people just don't feel as alone. And I am thinking about making it a call-in. I know how the Letter Hack does it through StreamYard, so I could do it similarly through that. And we can talk about things that aren't Christmas. You know, for the people who don't want to talk about Christmas and be reminded of that. So we could talk about things that aren't Christmas. I have a funny story about one time when I tried calling into the Majority Report that I think people would find very amusing. Speaking of Majority Report, wearing my hoodie. I was really hoping they would read my IM or pick up my phone call today because I just wanted to say goodbye to them for the new year and thank them for, you know, because everyone is so caught up in the now. We forget what happened earlier in the year and just the support they showed people like me. NBs with a uterus, trans folks earlier in the year. I wanted to remind them of everything that they did and how much I appreciate it. Because to have them push back, especially against TYT the way that they did so vocally, and they actually have a decent sized platform to be heard doing that, it meant a lot. Because I can post videos about it, sure, they get a few thousand views, they don't make a difference, but when Sam and Emma talk about it, it gets a lot more views and a lot more attention brought to it. And I mentioned it in a video back from when all this time was happening, is the majority report their subscription base seems to be going up a lot lately, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a correlating decrease in the subscribers to TYT. But yeah, I am definitely thinking of doing a live stream on Christmas Day, just for the people who are alone and lonely, because I've been in that position so many times. And up until today, there was a good possibility I was going to be alone on Christmas. And depending on how my family is, I might wish that I was alone on Christmas. But there's food involved if I go, so, yeah, and yeah, I could make it into a call-in show. I would want to have some sort of baseline questions to go by and things of that sort, but it should be fun. Oh, and thank you, everyone. I want to say thank you. Let's see. Okay. And let's see, which screen do I use for this? Can't really see it there. Let's make this bigger. Look at that. 6.04 subscribers. Thank you, everyone who has helped me get to that point. I did not think I was going to make that number before the end of the year, and I have. And I really appreciate all of your support in helping me get there, to get to that number. It's super exciting. Some of my videos are definitely getting more views, which is also exciting. My TYT video that I just made, it didn't do as well as I had hoped, because it's an important message in there, but it still has done well for my channel. And hopefully that continues, and hopefully more people start coming over for the live streams. Hopefully I'm not too rambly. I get to be rambly. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it, everyone who's helped me build this channel. It's so important, especially if I want to get to my dream of having a Canadian version of the Majority Report. The Maple Leaf Report? No, that sounds stupid. That sounds like actually like a meat brand that we have up here. We have Maple Leaf lunch meat. So I don't want that. Let's see. Soul Life, yeah. Xmas is lonely for me. The past few years, I drank myself into hibernation. Rachel Atwood, Ontario is stupidly huge. I can't handle how big that damn province is. Yes, because we're larger than landmass wise to the United States, yet we only have 10 provinces and 3 territories, and there's like 50 states. Like it's huge. Because I could be driving in one direction for 24 hours and still be in Ontario. Like a lot of people in Europe in particular, they don't comprehend this, because if they were to drive for 24 hours, they would have driven through like 100 countries, like actual countries. But no, I can drive for 24 hours still be in Ontario. That's why where I live, it's faster to go to the west, like Alberta and BC, if I scooch down through the United States, than it is to drive through Canada, because you drive through Canada, but then you have to go up and around the Great Lakes. And that's what adds a lot of time to that travel. I did a road trip once when I was 17. I could talk about that in the casual live stream on Christmas Day. But Sunday at 6 p.m. will be another kind of one of these live streams, because I still have so much news to get to. And there's going to be more that happens between now and then, I'm sure. Nadia, I hope you're feeling better and that you do not end up in the hospital. Brenda, no, let's face it, the right wants a national abortion ban, and I am against that, but how unworkable is it to have a patchwork of women's rights across states? Yeah, another thing that I appreciate about Canada that you Yankees don't have is there is some consistency in our laws across the country. Criminal law is the same across the country. So that I find is beneficial, that it's not a patchwork of you have different rights depending on which province you're in. Like, to some limited extent there is, but nowhere near what it's like for Americans. It's basically like you have different countries that are all connected. Yes, Brenda, I am on Eastern time, Eastern Standard Time, New York time. Oh, 0 PE. Sunday is your birthday, so you may pop by. Well, happy birthday in case, because, yeah, if something were to happen to my cats, then I'm not going to be showing up on Sunday. So there's always, the plan is to show up Sunday. So if I show up on Sunday and you show up on Sunday, I'll wish you a happy birthday again. But happy birthday right now. Rachel Atwood, do the territories have different laws versus the provinces? How they're run is very different. So it depends, because since criminal law is federal law, then that would apply to the territories. What makes the territories different than the provinces is that they are run by the federal government. So they don't have like provincial laws like we do here in Ontario. So they don't have, they have representatives that go to a federal level, but they don't have representatives kind of just like in Ontario we have the premier and things of that sort. So federal law applies to them, and standards and things of that sort. So it's not the same, but yeah, criminal law would be the same because that's federal. And for the most part, a lot of it is run the same way federally as it is provincially. But when it comes to, what's the word? Civil law, that can be different, a lot different. Rachel, I'd love to see Nunavut, Yukon, and or the Northwest Territories someday. Yeah, the furthest north I've been was still about a 2-hour drive from the border of the Northwest Territories, and it is such a different feel up there, like completely different feel with everything, like just how the air sits and you know, the sky, because days and nights change so drastically up there. Because, you know, I went in May one time. So my father passed away, and he came from a very northern town in Alberta. So I went for his funeral at the beginning of November years ago. And I didn't even realize it, because I'm such a night person, that it was already dark at like 3 p.m. But then I went back in May for the burial because I had to wait for the ground to thaw. And it was midnight and still the sun was up. It's quite the thing. Brenda Knoll, I hope Frodo feels better. Yeah, quick update on Frodo. I have a cat food that I got from the not-for-profit vet that he is actually eating a significant, like a notable amount, which is really reassuring. However, I can't keep him on that food. For one, those tins, like the half tins, it's over $5 per tin. But also, it's for recovery. It's not meant to be the primary food for cats. So I'm taking him into the not-for-profit vet on Wednesday, and so I'll ask them at that time if there's like another food that I can put him on that would be similar in taste. But until then, I'm going to be shoveling that food down his throat because he needs to gain weight. So that is just super positive. When I wake up in the morning and I see all of his wet food that I put down for him is gone. Like, I just so happy. So hopefully that keeps up. But if you can, I'm still about $640 away from paying off of all of his vet bills from the emergency of him not eating for about 3 days and throwing up about 6 times in one day, and very scary moment. So I'm still shy, about $650 from paying that off. Thank you so much for everyone who has helped out with that. I really, really appreciate it. Oh, also on Monday, if I'm doing a live stream, something I thought would be fun to do, tomorrow morning on Twitter, I'm going to write it tonight, hopefully, and then tomorrow morning post on Twitter the call for people living with poverty to reply to it, and then I'm going to randomly pick one to receive a portrait at no cost to them, as a thank you to the stranger person I don't even know, gave me over $500 towards Frodo's vet bills. So I'm going to be doing a portrait at no cost to somebody living with poverty. So I was thinking of posting it first thing tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, depending on when I get around to it. And then anybody who replies to it before midnight on Sunday. And then I'll do the draw Monday, and I might even just do it live on my stream, which would be super fun and exciting. And yeah, so the post that I'm going to be putting up will just be the rules and what to expect and how you actually qualify. Unfortunately, I think you do need a Canadian mailing address just for cost, because it's not free for me to do this. I will be spending some of my own money to do this, just for the shipping and everything. And so shipping to the States is a lot more expensive, unless the person would be willing to do that, cover that. So speaking of my art, though, you can go there to check it out, SandeeLovas.com. You can also contact Left of the Box. I actually have emails from that account that I realize I should get to, because I don't check it as much as I need to, because I rarely get emails to Left of the Box. But also, if you can, become a patron. It's really important that I get more patrons, because I cannot rely on YouTube for an income. Because like I said, my last video got demonetized because of a part of a video that's under a minute long that somebody decided to claim as copyright material. It's not technically, it's a copyright strike, but not like a real strike. Like, it's still allowed to be up, but it just means any money that it would make would go to this other place potentially, which I find is really ridiculous. Unless I were to edit out that part. But you know what? I want everyone to know that Christia Freeland, her heart breaks The Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, her heart breaks at the super long lineups at her church for the 1 day a week that they give out food pantries. And I think it's important that everyone sees how much her heart breaks for that. I'm also on these social medias. I'm on this one. Let's do it this way. I'm on this one a hell of a lot more than I am on these other ones. And the reason why I'm going to be using Twitter to post for the draw for the portrait is just I want people to reply to it with the picture that they want done. Because then of the pictures that are ones that I can do, I will select from there. So there will be, again, instructions on that. Because you can't really do that in Instagram. That's not a TikTok thing. And there's not as many people over on Blue Sky, especially people who live with disabilities and poverty, like the disability Twitter and poverty Twitter hasn't moved over there yet. So I'll be posting for that on Twitter at this time. Yeah, let's see. I should eat something. It's getting kind of late and I'm still rambling and I keep on saying I should stop rambling and then I continue to ramble because I see more people chatting and I want to be more chatting with people. Because then I see a comment from like my dogs are goth that says, "Oh shit, James, good luck." And now I need to see what are you wishing him luck for, because I also want to wish him luck and I want to know what I'm wishing him luck on. And so then I have to try to find his comment that I can't seem to find. So good luck, James, on whatever it was. My dogs are goth. Furthest north I've been is Edmonton. Yeah, so for my father's funeral, I flew into Edmonton. It was then a 7-hour drive north from Edmonton. And that is still 2 to 3 hours away from the border to the Northwest Territories. Again, you can drive 24 hours in one province and still be in that province. I love winter, though. I miss winter. 0 PE. I love when it gets dark early. LOL. Yeah, I'm such a night person, and unfortunately, all the nights are going to start getting shorter until the summer solstice at this point. Because unlike popular belief, nights get shorter in the winter. Because it starts on the winter solstice, and so technically they all start getting shorter. But I do like when it gets dark around 6 p.m. If I could have that all year round, I'd like that. Still didn't find the James comments, so yeah, good luck on whatever it is. Abraham Muhammad, we love you, Sandy. Aw, thank you. I love all you guys coming out. Really appreciate it. Will I ever do skits? That's what I usually do. That's more for video essays. Doing improv type stuff, live stream doesn't translate well. So in the video essays that I do on news and things of that sort, I sometimes put in very skit-like stuff into that, especially if you go to some of the Canadian, like I am Canadian ones, and I'm talking over a very crappy version of the national anthem and stuff. Like those are skits, and I do skits within those. So, and I like doing skits. I love performing. Rachel, I keep forgetting that Blue Sky is a thing. Has it gotten better these past few months? I post there. I get maybe 1 or 2 likes to a post. It's a different vibe there for sure. But yeah, But engagement on Twitter is also down, so. Clarence the Liar, Left the Box, just subscribe to your Patreon. I am sorry that my ADHD is so bad. Well, I thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah. If I can rely more on Patreon, then YouTube, really helpful, because like Mike from the Humanist Report ran into that where his entire channel got demonetized, and then like that is most of his stuff, and I don't want to run into that. You know, I don't want to run into the risk of having certain videos demonetized or my channel demonetized, and then an income that I kind of rely on there. Plus YouTube takes such a huge chunk from it. Patreon takes less. Did I just get some super chats? Aw, 0PE. Happy winter solstice, happy holidays, and thanks for the birthday wishes. Why, thank you for the $4.99. And Clarence Liar, $4.99 for Mr. Frodo. Why, thank you. Really appreciate any help I can get paying off those bills. Because Frodo, he's the world to me. He just means the world to me. And something I used to say way back in school, like when I was in high school, and it was meant as kind of like a satirical joke, but not really, because I had friends that didn't believe in Christmas and stuff of that sort. And so in their Christmas cards, I would scratch out Merry Christmas and put Happy Time Off School. And they're like, you don't have to do that. I'm like, I know, but you know, like you can say Merry Christmas. Like even back then they were saying you can say Merry Christmas even though I don't celebrate it. And I'm like, I know, but this is kind of just me acknowledging the fact that you don't celebrate Christmas by saying Happy Time Off School. So happy time off work to the Majority Report and everyone else who might have time off work. But I know not everyone gets time off of work. So I don't necessarily say that as a general statement. Because unfortunately, we live in such a world where some people do have to work over Christmas. And I often like to go see a movie on Christmas, and those are people who are working Christmas, but they should be getting compensated a lot more. Lori Morgan, I would say, have any Americans offered to pay for the shipping? I was thinking about that too, that if they're American, to pay for the shipping. Because it's not just the drawing, because again, I'm aware of what it's like to live in dire poverty and what this gift would mean to people. I'm not just sending the drawing. I'm also sending the frame from my pocket, because I'd feel bad that here they get this beautiful drawing that they want to cherish, but can't even afford the frame to put it in. So I'd be shipping a frame with it. And so it can get rather expensive to ship across the border. Like all this Majority Report stuff. It costs a lot to come over the border. Rachel Atwood, $6 USD sent on PayPal. Well, thank you so much, because that $6 is a lot more than $6 once it's converted to Canadian currency. The thing I loved the most about working at Rebel HQ was getting those American checks. Because they think they're paying me a certain amount, but they're actually paying me a lot more. But super appreciate it. Karen, I ditched Twitter ages ago before Musk took over even. I just kept getting so much garbage and couldn't figure out how to make it stop. Yeah, I totally understand why some people don't want to be on Twitter, but unfortunately it is the most accessible way of doing this draw, because again, it depends on the picture, because I'll put in the statement about what kind of picture it needs to be. But in the replies, you can reply with a picture. Like people can't post pictures to a YouTube video in the comments type thing. And the picture is important, because I don't want to say to somebody, okay, I'm going to draw a portrait of your puppy, but the puppy is no longer with us, and then all the pictures they have are ones that I can't work with. So it's important to me that I can at least see right away, okay, this is a picture that I can make into a good drawing, because I want it to be absolutely top-notch quality for whoever gets the drawing. So unfortunately, the people have to reply with a picture that they intend it to be, just so that I can make sure that I'm not going to break somebody's heart. So Looney Tunes 9000, before leaving for either Letterhack, Environmental Coffee House, or Non-Commitment Chick, hit the like and share button. I better get off of here so people can go split up their times with them. Rachel, I spent Xmas Eve at the Greyhound Terminal in Cleveland once and had some great conversations with Muslim majority amenities and staff. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, should finish signing off here. Unfortunately, none of the babies are coming here. Lanier was being such a pain in the ass before this started when I was trying to get everything set up, but then he's been away the entire time I've been talking. And Frodo did wander in here a couple times, but not close enough for me to grab him and pick him up, because I think he knows now what will happen if he gets too close to me when all these lights are on. It's also oh, music suggestions. I listen to EDM. If you go to Armin van Buuren's State of Trance YouTube channel, they just released the top 40, or is it top 50? One of those two numbers of trance tracks of the year, which I have to listen to. I love doing artwork to it because it's about 4 hours long. So I plan on doing that. That's on YouTube. So it's not the State of Trance YouTube channel. It's on Armin van Buuren, and he does a State of Trance. So he still looks after the State of Trance channel, which is like a 24/7 stream of trance music. But let's see, I'll quickly. There's no way I can play any of this online. There we go. But yeah, A State of Trance, episode 1152, Tune of the Year special. So they go over the top, what is it, top 50 or top 40? All those songs. But you can't see because of the way I split up the screen. That's my music recommendation. 4 hours long, and just really good music to have on in the background. Anyway, I gotta stop rambling. You guys gotta stop saying things that I'm going to respond to in the chat if you want me to go away. My dogs are gone. Yeah. Lanier. Abernathy. Abernathy is still kind of feeling the antibiotics and stuff, so he's not as energetic as he usually is. Abernathy. And he also thinks I'm going to shove pills down his throat if he comes to me. Lanier? Babies? Yeah. So, yeah. Armin van Buuren, State of Trance. You go there, great. 4 hours that I love drawing to. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get a kitty today. They're both, Lanier got himself all tired out harassing me before the stream started, to points where I'm like having to throw him off of me just for him to jump back on my face. 0 PE. We don't want you to go away, LOL. Yeah, we can do this more on Christmas Day when I do the stream. So I do have things because I want to get that statement hopefully written tonight, which I say that. No, I'm not going to get it written tonight because once I stop this, I'm done. I will remember to link that article though, the one from 2012. I will remember to link that before I completely shut down, because I'm off to watch Star Trek The Next Generation. because that's a good way to unwind. Okay. There's that. Oh, what is this? There's Frodo. Love that picture of him. Go. Okay. So yeah, all this stuff. Thank you everyone so much for coming out. Really appreciate it. Thank you to the mods. Hopefully you don't have to do too much work in this, but I really appreciate all you do. You guys have been a wonderful audience, and you know, I'm so glad to see that we're building a positive community here, which is just, you know, so important to have that supporting community, because, you know, something that's similar to the Majority Report community has really helped me get through a lot. So, see everyone Sunday. Should everything go well, and I'll have more Canadian shenanigans, because I have a bunch of cop stories I wanted to get to, so we'll get to them on Sunday, and other stuff. And I gotta stop talking and just hit the end. Oh, right. I gotta do my sign off. Salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.